Urgent. Our forces have broken through the Russian Federation's defensive line. The stakes are higher than ever. Let the HIMARS mow down the enemy. Zaporizhzhia region is slipping out of the hands of Russian troops. Syrskyi is unleashing fire on Russian generals. Now it's official. Zelensky has announced it. Our forces gave the enemy a taste of birch porridge and disrupted Putin's march plans. An epic moment. The dictator is in mourning. Ukrainian drones have destroyed Moscow's top base. The Kremlin's fleet is rushing to the bottom. There are hardly any military aircraft left. Shocking footage. At the same time, a bomb explodes over Crimea. A fierce sweep of the peninsula by our forces. The first details are astonishing. Darkness did its job, and all of this happened just now. Hello, I'm Darina Hutsakalo, and we're getting started. At this very moment, the Ukrainian armed forces' counter-offensive on the front line has reached maximum speed. Could it be that the goal is to liberate entire regions? The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is speaking openly. This is a victory for Ukraine. In February, our troops regained control over more territory than Russia had captured.
We are conducting effective and active operations in the Oleksandrivka and Huliaipol directions. Contrary to the repeated statements of the Russian leadership, we are only strengthening our control over Kupiansk, and we are reducing the number of enemy saboteurs in the city. We continue to hold back the enemy in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration area.
Syrskyi emphasized that this offensive mission, with the aftertaste of the total destruction of the enemy on the front line, has even surpassed the Kursk operation. The air assault forces have confirmed this. Near Zaporizhzhia, the occupiers are scattering in all directions and abandoning their positions. Let the HIMARS work without mercy.
As of now, 9 settlements have been liberated. 3 settlements have been cleared of the enemy in our zone. And right now, work is underway to liberate several more settlements. Military units and subunits of the Air Assault Forces Group continue active offensive operations in the Oleksandrivka direction, imposing their own terms of battle on the enemy.
After such a failure, all of Gerasimov's ambitious goals for major conquests went down the drain. Now there will be no March breakthrough. Moreover, the occupiers will have to forget about any successes at the front for a long time. Zelensky said this officially. We
have received plans for 2026 to 2027. We understand what they want. We understand that their directions remain relevant. The occupation of the east of our country, namely the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. They definitely want to continue in the direction of the Zaporizhzhia region and also towards the Dnipro. It's difficult for them, but they are eyeing the Odessa region as well. We see these directions. But for now, these maps have nothing to do with reality because they cannot accomplish their objectives.
Urgent. Another Russian warship has epically gone to the bottom. It is likely referring specifically to a Kaliber missile carrier. This assumption was published by the Telegram channel Crimean Wind. In the published footage, you can see smoke billowing from the vessel. Putin won't be able to hide this.
The Russian Black Sea Fleet has 3 frigates of the project. 11356R Burevestnik. Of these, Admiral Essen and Admiral Makarov are located in Novorossiysk. Admiral Grigorovich is in the Mediterranean Sea.
It is known that these are the newest ships which can carry on board a deck-based Ka-27 or Ka-31 helicopter and Orlan UAVs. Now it seems the dictator's fleet has noticeably decreased. All this happened after our lightning strikes on Russian Novorossiysk. The city was surrounded by unmanned boats. After the attack, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine added one more eliminated major naval target to their report.
So this is the one we're looking for, right? Here's the damage. So what exactly was hit in that specific location?
As part of reducing the military and economic potential of the Russian aggressor, units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces struck an oil terminal, Sheskharis and the naval base, in Novorossiysk in Russia's Krasnodar region.
It seems this is just the beginning, so we're keeping an eye on how things develop. A sensation at last. Crimea is breaking away to rejoin Ukraine. Details that shock even the skeptics are already emerging. Is the Kremlin ready for the consequences? Is this the beginning of a new era for official Kyiv?
Eco-focus attacks. has finally shifted to the Russians' near-rear area. in the occupied territory. And
Now, shock. It seems Yevpatoria is the first to prepare for liberation. This is impossible to miss. A cold shower for the dictatorial regime.
the defense forces attacked the territory of the Yevpatoria aircraft repair plant. In the plant's buildings and hangars, the Russians stored and serviced UAVs, Forepost and Orion.
It seems our forces have no intention of stopping a new precision strike. And once again, right on target. Russian equipment has been disabled, their eyes in the sky are clouded, air control is disrupted, and the Kremlin is in panic.
Units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces struck the long-range space communication center in the area of the Vitin Nature Reserve and a radar station. The K-1 pad near Vinohradny in temporarily occupied Ukrainian Crimea. And
To top it off, darkness covers the peninsula. Ukrainian drones achieved the impossible. They partially disabled the Russian Taman electrical substation, which is a key node of the so-called energy bridge to temporarily occupied Crimea.
a fire broke out, the substation was partially disabled, and the auto transformers were destroyed.
Lukashenko urgently gathered his generals. A secret decision by Minsk and Moscow. The Ukrainian armed forces are no longer going to tolerate this. Put up with it. A blow to the dictatorship, live on air. Belarusians are in shock, and the father is hastily launching the mobilization process. An offensive against NATO? Lukashenko has signed his own death sentence. Putin won't be able to save him anymore. Shocking insider information. Don't miss it. Coming up next. A new attack? Russia and Belarus are preparing new joint exercises on Belarusian territory. Volodymyr Zelensky revealed this in an interview with an independent Belarusian publication. He said that Ukraine is monitoring this and assessing how large these exercises will be.
I know that they, Lukashenko and Putin, are talking about joint military exercises on the territory of Belarus. We will see how much bigger they actually turn out to be. The last time they were massive, as you remember, the offensive against Ukraine began. So all of this poses significant risks for Ukraine, that's for sure. And I believe significant risks for Belarusians as well.
Experts are also saying that it is necessary to study the number of troops there very carefully, and based on that, analyze how great the threat is and what the Kremlin's plans are.
That is, if we're talking about any kind of invasion of Ukraine. Kyiv 2.0 in that sense. Let me remind you that in 2022, a group of a certain size took part in that invasion. 40,000 personnel from the territory of Belarus, Russian occupation forces. Can Russia even now afford to prepare a 40,000 strong group like that? No, there is no such regular staffing either. In order to attempt another incursion into Ukraine with the goal of reaching Kyiv, the Russian group would need to be 100,000 to 150,000 strong, and it would be simply impossible to deploy such a force on the territory of Belarus without being noticed. And this would mainly be a group consisting of human resources. Therefore, these threats can be monitored remotely and assessed.
Interestingly, according to experts, Ukraine will no longer hold itself back in the event of a threat. That is, if Russia carries out provocations on the territory of Belarus, then the Ukrainian armed forces will also strike targets on Belarusian territory.
Here it's also important to note that Russia believes it can carry out border provocations from the territory of Belarus, along once again our northern borders. But I don't think that in this case Ukraine will show any restraint, tolerance towards the territorial presence of Russians on the territory of Belarus, and their concentrated deployment. All available means at our disposal will be used to strike them.
Is one of the factors the fact that military exercises are being prepared on the territory of Belarus? Mass conscription notices for men both in Russia and in Belarus. And in Belarus, everyone is being taken to Grodno and other cities in the west. And this is important. The Grodno region is adjacent to the Suwałki corridor, a strategic area between Belarus and Kaliningrad. They are being taken quickly without even having time to pack at home. Sometimes they are taken straight from work, as women say. Officially, the authorities say this is a test of combat readiness and a response to the West's aggressive rhetoric. That's why such exercises are not only a threat to Ukraine. An attack on NATO is no longer something unrealistic. After all, Putin has already carried out hybrid attacks in Europe, and NATO countries are already preparing for combat. Moreover, it has become known that Belarus and Russia have involved Hamas fighters in building tunnels to Poland. The official version is that these tunnels are for smuggling illegal migrants into Europe as part of a hybrid war against the West. But experts do not rule out the possibility of sending sabotage groups.
Imagine that these tunnels could be used for an invasion. The idea is that these tunnels could be used specifically for sending out raiding-type sabotage groups, small teams that would carry out terrorist activities and stage provocations on neighboring territory.
Is Ukraine truly ready to protect its sovereignty against a potential renewed invasion by Russian forces originating from the territory of Belarus? Yes, but is the NATO alliance fully prepared for the possibility of a wider war?
When we consider the current geopolitical landscape and the various international tensions that are unfolding right now, one has to wonder, what exactly is the nature of the ongoing relationship and the potential for future diplomatic or military engagement with Russia? That is exactly right. I couldn't agree with you more on that point.
That's why it's pointless to negotiate with Russia out of fear of provoking Putin, as most Western politicians are doing now. Putin only understands force, and if he is not stopped in time, a war in Europe could start as early as this year. China and Russia have entered a zone of turbulence. The old agreements between dictators are melting before our eyes. The beginning of a game whose rules are known only to the Celestial Empire. Moscow has confirmed its status as Beijing's vassal and did so publicly. Total shock. The Chinese leader ruthlessly used Putin. The Kremlin still can't catch its breath. Hell has begun in Russia. It can no longer be extinguished. More details on this ahead. China has warned its citizens living in Russia about a new law that obliges foreigners to serve at least 1 year in the Russian army. The Chinese authorities have urged caution since officially China does not assist Russia with either manpower or weapons.
China's position on the Ukrainian crisis is consistent and clear. We do not add fuel to the fire and do not use this conflict for our own gain.
Pairs, threes, tens, millions of Chinese soldiers. That would be just what we need right now. Exactly what we need.
And why do you think so? Why?
No?
Do you really think that only soldiers should die?
Oh, I look at the Belgorod region and think how much we lack the Chinese army.
Despite this, China is actively buying cheap Russian oil and selling Russia the necessary technologies, profiting in every way and driving Russia into increasing dependence.
And just look at what, for example, the soldiers are driving. What are they driving? Russian-made cars? You have to be a real patriot to drive a Patriot. Because it costs a fortune, breaks down all the time, and the spare parts are insanely expensive. That's why the guys drive Chinese cars.
Despite the turbulence in the international situation, China and Russia will remain committed to the spirit of eternal good neighborliness, comprehensive strategic cooperation, and mutually beneficial partnership.
I think that in the coming days, weeks, and months, China will only continue to increase its support for the Russian Federation. After this, it will become increasingly difficult to claim that China and the Chinese leadership are not involved in what is happening in the Russian-Ukrainian war. It will get harder and harder.
According to intelligence data, about 200 Chinese citizens are fighting in the Russian army. Ukrainian President Zelensky stated that Russians are recruiting Chinese people through TikTok.
Accordingly, there are documents, their passports, and even credit cards. These are Chinese citizens. This is yet another country that is providing military support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On Russia's side, this is another country after Iran and the military from North Korea. I understand that we are a strong country, but we cannot fight simultaneously against many countries, all of whom want something from our land.
China will not allow Russia to suffer defeat in the war with Ukraine. This is obvious for Xi Jinping and his associates. Russia's success in the war with Ukraine is also a success for Moscow in its confrontation with the West. China may believe that the collapse of the West's hopes to contain Russia will help strengthen China's own geopolitical influence.
Last year, Ukrainian soldiers captured 2 Chinese citizens who told the Standard story that they were traveling to work in construction but ended up at war, and that it was their personal initiative not connected to the position of the Chinese state.
For those of our compatriots in China who might want to take part in this war, we want to say that it is not worth doing so because everything we heard from the Russians turned out to be untrue. And it turned out that Russia is not as strong and Ukraine is not as weak, so it's better not to take part in wars at all. I have already said this, and I want to repeat that our actions in Ukraine have nothing to do with the government. We actually did this entirely on our own personal initiative.
At the same time, Putin is increasingly bending to China and making Russia less and less independent and more dependent on the will of Xi Jinping. Even Lavrov couldn't hold back and called Putin.
The donkey is a common sight across the vast rural landscapes of China, where it has served as a reliable and hard-working animal for many centuries. These creatures play a vital role in traditional agriculture, helping farmers transport goods and navigate the rugged terrain of the countryside. As a steadfast and dependable friend, and an unwavering, consistent partner, you are my reliable friend, a stable partner, and a committed strategic ally of the Russian Federation. And this serves as the absolutely vital and fundamental cornerstone for the continued development of our Russian-Chinese relations.
Yesterday, my friend and representative of the PRC treated me to such Peking duck.
Honestly, I'll tell you, there were 2 pieces, and I thought I'd only eat 1 piece. You know what I mean, right?
That's it.
But I couldn't resist. I ate the second one too. Obviously, it was even tastier.
When have we ever seen the president of Russia tell Chinese journalists about how his closest relatives are doing? That his family members are learning Chinese on their own initiative? When else has that happened? China's economic influence on the Russian economy was crucial for the survival of that economy in Russia's confrontation with the West. Of course, this is an entirely new, I would say historically new situation.
It seems that for now, all Putin can do is travel to China and beg for real military support, which they will never agree to provide. After all, no matter how much the Russians bend over backwards, the Chinese are just using them, making real money on the European and American markets. Breaking news from Europe. A large-scale reinforcement is being prepared for Ukraine. 10,000 soldiers are ready to join the fight. British paratroopers are standing by, ready to deploy. London is determined to act decisively and swiftly. Valery Zaluzhny has confirmed an unprecedented breakthrough. France is also joining the initiative, ready to provide the armed forces of Ukraine with the necessary reinforcement. The first details that could turn the entire front around are already emerging. Don't miss them.
France and Britain are preparing their troops for deployment to Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that each of these countries may send international contingents of up to 5,000 servicemen to Ukraine. At the same time, the question of where exactly these units will be stationed remains open for now. He spoke about this in an interview with AFP.
Great Britain and France, they officially joined in. When we signed our formal declaration with all of them, the coalition participants who are willing, we understand that these 2 countries are already ready to provide a brigade. 1 brigade each. And there are also signals from...
Obviously, the United Kingdom considers Ukraine an important element of European security and of its own security. That is, it is clear that the United Kingdom, unlike some other European countries, takes the Russian threat quite seriously and understands that in the end, it could destabilize the entire continent. Therefore, something needs to be done about it.
But that's not all. Britain and France are already preparing their airborne troops for a possible peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. About 1,500 servicemen took part in exercises codenamed Orion 26. These are the largest military exercises since the Cold War. They are practicing a scenario in which one of the NATO allies supposedly faces an uprising and the threat of invasion. Paratroopers from France and the United Kingdom are working on deploying to any point in the world. The Telegraph writes that the exercises are taking place against the backdrop of statements from Paris that France may send troops to Ukraine. 6,000 military personnel. As explained by the commander of the Parachute Regiment of the 3rd Marine Corps of France, their main tasks are speed of action, endurance, and autonomy. According to journalists, the exercises took place on the 4th anniversary of the full-scale Russian-Ukrainian war. More than 600 soldiers from the British 16th Air Assault Brigade conducted a simulated airborne raid together with the French 11th Parachute Brigade.
The airborne forces deployed in the area must be able to hold out for 48 to 72 hours using their own drones, batteries, and ammunition.
A few weeks earlier, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer stated that his country, together with France, would lead a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine if a peace agreement is reached. At the same time, the units that could be deployed in such an operation have not been officially announced. However, journalists, citing a source in the Defense Ministry, note that the 16th Air Assault Brigade is among the high readiness forces that could be deployed on short notice. In addition, the first Ukrainian defense plant has started operating in the United Kingdom. This is a manufacturing complex of the company Ukrospec Systems, which produces drones. As reported by Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Valery Zaluzhny, the Center for Engineering Expertise will remain in Ukraine, while production will take place in the United Kingdom. For Ukraine, this project means stability and the ability for long-term planning. For the United Kingdom, this means strengthening its own defense industry, gaining access to technologies proven in modern warfare, and creating jobs.
In fact, the United Kingdom is trying to restore its military potential, including with the participation of Ukraine. That is a number of collaborations, a number of projects for the placement and production of Ukrainian drones, for example, on the territory of the United Kingdom. All of this is happening.
Political scientist Petro Lishchuk. The United Kingdom has long been a constant and reliable partner.
This refers to the sovereign nation of Ukraine, which is situated in Eastern Europe and stands as the second largest country on the continent, known for its vast plains, rich agricultural history, and a deeply resilient cultural heritage that defines its unique place in the modern world today. At the start of the war, when the United Kingdom was the first to begin supplying Ukraine with quite significant volumes of anti-tank weaponry, the United Kingdom was the first to provide its tanks to Ukraine. The United Kingdom began supplying its missiles to Ukraine.
And this is not where the UK's support ends. It will continue to stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
I believe that this role of the United Kingdom will continue in the future as well. That is the role. One of the main advocates for Ukraine among the major developed countries, Zakhar, the United Kingdom, who are they? It is Ukraine's most responsible partner among the major powers. Zakhar, an initiator of any assistance, a country that tries to lobby for Ukraine's interests both in Europe and among the US participants.
With that, we put a period to our broadcast. We continue right now to follow the most relevant events so we can be the first to tell you about them. Don't forget to subscribe. See you soon!